As the coronavirus crisis worsens, so does the economic fallout, costing more and more Americans their livelihoods. More than 853,000 people applied for first-time unemployment insurance last week. That's an increase of 137,000 Americans compared to the previous week. Across the country, various COVID-19 restrictions have paralyzed business owners. Many cannot operate at full capacity. Nearly 10 months into the pandemic, some Americans are wondering how much more they can possibly take. For more on this, Mark Hamrick joins me. He's a senior economic analyst for Bankrate. Mark, always great to see you. Thanks for joining us again. So this jump in unemployment claims is more than economists expected. Do you think the amount of claims will stagnate, or can we expect these numbers to keep rising?
I think we'll be very hard-pressed to see much improvement in the near term, Tanya. And while, yes, you're right, this number did come in above expectations, it should not be terribly surprising. Because as we've said, for the 38 weeks since this downturn began, the only way the economy is going to heal is when we get the pandemic under control. And the pandemic is at the opposite of that spectrum right now. So yes, we're still in a period of risk with both the pandemic and the U.S. economy.
And of course, across the country, more than 110,000 restaurants have permanently closed. Restaurants, brick and mortar retail, and travel appear to be among the top industries completely upended by pandemic restrictions. Again, to your point, something that should not surprise us. But which industries do you see as the most vulnerable right now, and which will be the slowest, do you think, to fully recover?
Well, you point out some important facts there, Tanya, and people do tend to gravitate toward the restrictions that are imposed by government. But the most important restrictions that are occurring are those that consumers are imposing upon themselves, because those are more universal. And so even in the areas of the country where governments have either been reticent or perhaps slower to put restrictions in effect, there are some areas they just will not do it. Consumers themselves can read the headlines and listen to the medical experts. And so to your question, as of the last jobs report, the monthly data we had just last week, there were still more than 3 million jobs lost in leisure and hospitality this year compared to where we were at the beginning of the year. And there's still plenty of other areas that have a lot of room to make up. Retail is among them, manufacturing is among them, even business and professional services and healthcare. So the broader economy is suffering in this, but we do know that there is that light at the end of the tunnel. And when we get the vaccines widely taken, that will help the economy to heal as well.
Let me ask you something. Do you see the issues in the certain segment of the economy that we discussed, retail, hospitality? Do you see those issues becoming so deep that they will start to seep into the other aspects of the economy that have been relatively stable? And by that, I mean people who have jobs that have allowed them to work from home rather easily. They haven't had much of a disruption in their employment. We've seen sort of those jobs remain sort of steady. But do you think that as the weakness in the other areas of the economy continues to compound, we'll start to see weakness in those areas as well?
Absolutely, because, if you can think about areas of the country, to use that leisure and hospitality or travel destination example as indicative for other parts of the economy. If you think about an area, let's say it's Orlando or Las Vegas or Hawaii, some of those areas that have really suffered because they've not been able to welcome the number of travelers they would have in the past. Essentially, so many different industries are reliant on that industry to do well. And so, if you're not working in Las Vegas right now, you're not paying any number of different people that you'd otherwise be either purchasing goods or services from. I mean, I do think that leisure and hospitality, retail continue to be effectively ground zero in the sense of where the most problems are in the economy, and they will be the slowest to heal because the damage has been so severe there.
Now, of course, the number of Americans receiving some form of federal unemployment assistance is now over 19 million. To put that number into perspective for our viewers, it's about the same number of people who live in the entire state of New York. So when might we see a light at the end of the tunnel on the unemployment front? I mean, Do we know, again, if it's going to take more action and assistance from the government to get us there, or could there be an organic recovery once a vaccine is released and we can kind of get rid of the specter of the virus?
Well, both are going to be helpful. And if we take the words to heart that we're hearing from some of the people in Washington, D.C. today, I think that would be broadly applauded if they can finally pass some legislation that is seen as urgently needed. More than 10 million Americans prepared to lose their jobless claims. And yes, by all means, the vaccine, the acceptance of the vaccine. Obviously, there's some work to do on the part of the incoming Biden administration to communicate that to the American public, but we are seeing signs of hope there. We are on a journey to a better place. Unfortunately, we still have to weather this winter, figuratively as well as literally, and then perhaps much to celebrate both with the economy and the pandemic in the spring and our own immunity to COVID-19.
Indeed, a lot to take in. Mark Hamrick, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.